Alright guys, welcome back to our C++ Text RPG series. Today we're going to be working on the items, equipment, and inventory classes. So what are the items? There are many items that can be used in an RPG. Some of them are including status effects. These are items that can cure different status effects such as poison, blind, deafness, mute. Health, these are items that can cure the player's HP or the health points of the player. Revive are items that can revive a fallen player. So a fallen player is a player that has died or has 0 HP. It can't be used on a player that's already alive. If it is used on a player that's already alive, it'll just basically be like wasting it. Ethers or mana. These are items that can restore magic or mana points. There are also elixirs, and those can restore both HP and MP. Battle items are items that can only be used in battles, such as bombs or smoke bombs, etc. And then key items. These are really cool because these allow to be used for different bartering, secrets, or continue the storyline of the game. There's no other use for them except for actually something to do with the story. So here's a little example of what the item class will look like. The item class is going to be an abstract class, meaning that we can't instantiate the class itself. You're going to have to create child classes from the items, but each one will have to override the function onUse because there'll be different uses for each item and what they can do. Here's a little example of the add item and decrement functions of what they could end up looking like. Okay, so let's talk about equipment. What is equipment? In most RPGs, equipment are items that the player can equip themselves. The equipment can have many effects on the player's defense, speed, attack, power. It can have an elemental effect where it can nullify fire or wind attacks, or it could add a fire or water or ice element to a weapon. So all the equipment will have a name, description, buy and sell price, stat modifier value. And what does that mean? What is the stat modifier? A stat modifier is which stat will this modify. Does it have an elemental effect? It'll also have a type. Here's an example of the equipment class. Now, when I wrote this, I wrote iEquipment, but it's not actually an interface because we do define different functions in here, and we are also assigning values to stuff at the beginning. So it's actually an abstract class, and there's a few functions that we're going to have to override the equipment. So if you see here, each equipment's going to have a type, it's going to have a weapon type, an armor type, and there might be changes down the road, but I thought it would be easier just to have all the different types into one and then change it based on what we are using it for. So here's a little example of the stat modifier. It has either a modifier type, is it modifying the strength, speed, intelligence, is it adding any of these things? Is it elemental? If it's elemental, what type of element is it? So it'll have a name and what type of modifier it is. This is also subject to change. Everything that we do is subject to change. If you have any ideas that maybe I should be doing something in a different way, let me know in the comments below and I'll see if we can make it work. I'm all about learning and getting better. Hopefully you are as well. So let's talk about the inventory. The inventory itself is a very easy class for us. All the inventory does is hold on to items for the player or the party. The party will hold the inventory and each player will have a reference to that inventory. Here's a little idea of what it could look like. So the inventory class is going to have items and equipment. So if you see here, it'll just have a vector of shared pointers of items. And we're going to be using the abstract classes as our pointer because if we have a pointer, we can use polymorphism here. That's why we're using those abstract classes. And we can use the child classes. Alright guys, let's create the item, equipment, and inventory classes. Alright guys, before we get into creating the items and equipment classes, let's go over a little bit of changes I made here in the console. So if you see here, I made some changes to our write function in the console. Let's bring up the code. So before, I ended up messing around and I found that we were able to write beyond the buffer and it was causing heap allocation issues when we were trying to shut down the game. So here I just did a little assert. So we added assert in or assert. And then I'm asserting that our position that we're sending in plus the text size is less than the buffer size. Now, well in debug, the assert will stop here. But once you go into release, we want this to happen. We don't care if this happens because it just won't write and you'll see it right on the screen that it won't see, like say you have a line or something, the line won't be there. Well, that's because you're going beyond the buffer size, your position. You're trying to write beyond the position in the buffer. So all it will do is it'll do this check and then it'll return. So it's not going to crash or anything. But during debug, I'd rather it crash for us or do an assert here so we can see what's going on, fix it right away. Alright, so let's start the equipment class. And we're going to be doing it the same way that we always do. So we're going to go over here, source, add, new item. And we're going to call it equipment. We're going to include string. And we're going to forward declare the player. We're actually going to do this a little bit different than what I did in the slides because I've been slowly changing my mind. It's actually taken me a while to make this particular video because every time I write it, I change my mind a little bit. Let's start. So the first thing we're going to start with is the stat modifier, and that's just going to be a struct. Struct stat modifier, and it's going to have a modifier type. So what does it modify? Strength, and that equals 0. Strength, speed, intelligence, dexterity. Is it an elemental? Or no type? If it's elemental, we're also going to want to have what type of elemental type it is. Elemental type. Fire. Earth. Wind. Ice. Water. Lightning. Is lightning an element? Or no type. So it's going to have an int. Because this is a struct, I don't like to use the M. I use stat modifier val. We're going to have our modifier type. We're going to have our elemental type. And let's have std w string modifier type string, and we're going to have a stat modifier. And we're going to do default values. Just set them to no type for now. Same with elemental. So in here, we're going to set the modifier type string, switch, awesome. strength, speed, intelligence, dexterity, elemental, or no type. Alright, that's the stat modifier. So now let's do, I changed it and I wanted to call it weapon properties. And that'll also be another struct. Weapon properties. And it's going to have an enum class, weapon type, and so we'll have sword, dagger, bow, staff, or not weapon. Then it's going to just basically have int, attack power, and it's going to have its weapon type. So we're going to do it again with defaults. So it's just weapon power and weapon type. So there's our weapon properties, and we're just going to copy this and create the armor properties. It's going to have an armor type, defense power, so let's change this to not armor. And the types of armor we're going to have are headgear, chest or body, footwear, or not armor. Change these here. So armor power, defense power. Okay. So now we have our stat modifier struct, armor properties, and weapon properties. So now let's create our abstract equipment class. So that is class equipment. Finally, right? So what's the equipment class going to need? Well, we need to know what type of equipment it is. So again, we're going to have another enum public enum class equip type, and it's going to be, you're going to have a few types. You're going to have weapon, Let's make that equal to 0 as well. I don't know if this is needed, but give it a start value. So weapon, armor, or accessory, or no type. So this way we'll be able to separate weapons, armor properties, and accessory. We'll probably have an accessory property as well, but we'll do that later because I still haven't figured out what I want to do for accessories yet. So what are some things that we're going to need? So we're going to want to have one private item. So because this is an abstract class, I don't want this accessed directly from the children. I want this to be set with one set function, and then that's it. And that is equip type, me equip type. Me equip type. I don't know why that's messing with me right now. Now we have some protected functions. Protected, or not functions, sorry, we're gonna have protected variables. And it's gonna have a name, W string, MS name, MS description, whoops. We're going to have our buy price, sell price, the count, so the count's always going to start with 1. And I think we might use the weight. We'll put it in for now. I'm not sure if we're going to want to use the weight. We're also going to have, is it equipped? I'll start that off as false. We're going to have weapon properties. We're going to have armor properties. And then we're also going to have the stat modifier. And then we're going to have this one set equip type function. Silly me. Alright, so let's get to the public stuff. What are we going to have? We are going to have a virtual destructor. Some functions that we need to override. We're going to have a virtual const int get value. So for this one, so the get value, basically, if you're making a weapon, you're going to set this as your attack power. And if you're making armor, it's going to be the defense power. So that's going to be the get value function. Then we're going to have a virtual bool on equip. And we need a player reference. On equip and then on remove. Now all these functions need to be done in their child classes of the equipment. So now let's make a few getters and setters or modifiers. Well, not modifiers, but we'll have remove. That's just if the item is equipped, make it not equipped. So we're going to do the same thing for if not equipped, equip the item, and we'll just call this equip. We'll be using these inside of here, plus whatever else we do to the player's stats. But we'll go over that in another video. So another one, just to check if it's equipped, const is equipped. So this is good for filtering because we're going to have our inventory list and we're not going to want to see all the item in our list if it's equipped. Or if you want to see it and you can just put an E beside it to show that it is equipped, that's good too. But this is good to know. Let's get the name. Same for the description. We'll just call that description. Description. Okay, get description. Okay. We're going to have an add. And that's just going to be mcount plus equals none. Now I haven't decided if we're actually going to have a cap on the items, but we'll think about that. We'll add that later. Not too hard to add. We're going to get the count. So now we're going to want get type. We're going to want to get the weapon properties, armor properties, and the stat modifier. So and these will all be const as well. Because you can't change its type or you can't change its properties. Oh, it's just equipment. Equip type. We'll send that as a reference. Get armor properties. And we're going to do stat modifiers as well. So that's the start of the equipment class right here. So we're not going to do the weapons and stuff right now because I want to do stats before that. And before we do that, let's just quickly do the item class. So just like before, start an item, item.h. Okay, so just like the equipment class, we're going to need a string, and we're going to need forward declaration of the player. So let's create the item class, item, and we're going to have a public enum item type, health, status effect, revive, not revive, revive, battle, and key items. Let's add no item as well, or no type, sorry. I like to put those in just so it's like a check. So if it goes into something like if it's no type, just throw here like, hey, you didn't set a type. So we're gonna have anything private? Probably not. So protected though, yes we are. Protected. So we're gonna have protected, we're gonna have a count, the item count. This always starts with 1. We're gonna have our type. Actually, we should make that private as well. It's gonna have the name. Let's call it item name. Item description goes here. And let's have a little function, void set type, item type. Alright, some public functions. We're going to have a virtual destructor. We're going to have, this is the onUse function, virtual onUse. This will be bool. Yeah, let's do bool. onUse player. It's going to need a player reference. So if this works, return true. If there's a problem, false. So we're going to have get count. The decrement function. The decrement just checks the count. It's greater than 0. And count minus minus. Let's put this down the line. Then oops. Let's just check if we are equal to 0, less than equal to 0, and just make sure it's 0. Kind of like a clamp. And add is pretty straightforward. Taking a number though, because you might add more than one. Like say you're in a shop and you don't want to just buy one at a time. You can just increase the amount you want to buy. It'll check to see if you have enough gold to purchase them all. Put that number into here, then add to your account. So let's get the name. Get the description. I think that's good for our items. If we need to come back and change this, we will. So let's quickly make our inventory class. So again, add to our source, so new item, h, inventory, inventory.h. So the inventory class is going to need a little bit more. We need our item. We need our equipment. We need a vector, sorry. Vector. We're going to need memory as well. So we're going to be using a smart pointer here. Alright, and we also need forward declare the player. Do we have to do that, or is it automatically done in these? We'll do it anyway. Class, inventory. So it's kind of some private. Our items. Oops. And our equipment. We're gonna have constructor and destructor. Destructor can be default. And we're gonna have const, std, vector, std, shared pointer, reference. Sorry. We want to be able to get the items. We're going to want the same for equipment. So add item, add equipment. So let's quickly make these. Alright, so that's going to be it for this one. Next time we'll implement these, and we'll also implement the weapons classes as well. Alright, so in the next video, we're going to start the weapon and armor classes. I still haven't fully figured out how I want to work with these. I've got an idea in place, but I do know that our weapons will have two types, melee and range weapons, and we'll also be able to have different types of armor, etc. Headgear, footwear. But we'll go over that in the next video. I'm still tweaking the classes. Everything will get put up on GitHub. Make sure to check out the GitHub account. And thank you. I'll see you next time.